Hey, what's up guys? Ginger here. So a few days ago I was listening to a talk by Andrew Clavin, and he mentioned a book that I haven't heard of before called The Ones Who Walk Away from Omelas by Ursula K. Le Guin. And he made some really valid points which I just sort of wanted to expand upon a little bit. Well, I thought they were valid anyway. I also don't really know much yet. But anyways, his main theme of his message was how dystopias are utopias unless you remember morality. So the whole point was he would then go through an example of, say, Aldous Huxley's Brave New World, and he said it actually could be viewed as a utopia because everything works and everyone's fed and the actual society functions. But the only reason we know that it's a dystopian nightmare is because we have our human sense of morals, and we can see that these people living in the system aren't actually human. They've sort of given up their soul for comfort. I love that point. And then he mentioned this book, The Ones Who Walk Away from Omelas. And it describes a paradise. It says a place where people are happy but not stupid, and there's no crime and no kings, but there's still laws that people follow, and they've got high science and they're all happy. And it basically describes paradise on Earth. And it mentions how people come from all around to come into Omelas to be part of this grand society. So I just want to read to you a little bit of the end of the book, which is only like 4 pages long, or at least in the PDF version I found it might be longer in reality. There we go, found it. So I want to read this part because it's the part that sort of emphasizes the point that Clavin was making the other week. So they've finished describing their utopia, and now they say, do you believe? Do you accept the festival, the city, the joy? No? Then let me describe one more thing. And then here it comes. So listen up. It'll probably take about 5 minutes to read through, page and a half. In a basement under one of the beautiful public buildings of Omelas, or perhaps in the cellar of one of its most spacious private homes, there is a room. It has one locked door and no window. A little light sleeps in, dustily between the crack in the boards, second-hand from a cobweb window somewhere across the cellar. In one corner of the little room, a couple of mops, with stiff, clotted, foul-smelling heads stand near a rusty bucket. The floor is dirt, a little damp to the touch, as cellar dirt usually is. The room is about 3 paces long and 2 paces wide, a mere broom closet or disused tool room. In the room, a child is sitting. It could be a boy or a girl. It looks about 6, but is actually 10. It is feeble-minded. Perhaps it was born defective. Or perhaps it has become imbecile through fear, malnutrition, and neglect. It picks its nose and occasionally fumbles vaguely with its toes or genitals, as it sits hunched in the corner furthest from the bucket and the 2 mops. It is afraid of the mops. It finds them horrible. It shuts its eyes, but it knows that the mops are still standing there. And the door is locked, and nobody will come. The door is always locked, and nobody ever comes. Except that sometimes the child has no understanding of time or interval. It knows that sometimes the door rattles terribly and opens, and a person or several people are there. And a person or several people are there. One of them may come in and kick the child to make it stand up. The others never come close, but peer in at it with frightened, disgusted eyes. The food bowl and the water jug are hastily filled. The door is locked, the eyes disappear. The people at the door never say anything, but the child, who has not always lived in this tool room, can remember sunlight, and its mother's voice sometimes speaks. I will be good, it says. Please let me out. I will be good. They never answer. The child used to scream for help at night and cry a good deal, but now it only makes a kind of whining. Sorry. It speaks less and less often. It is so thin that there are no calves to its legs. Its belly protrudes. It lives on half a bowl of cornmeal a day. It is naked. Its buttocks and thighs are a mass of festered sores as it sits in its own excrement continually. They all know it is there, all the people of Omelas. Some of them have come to see it. Others are content merely to know it is there. They all know that it has to be there. Some of them understand why, and some do not. But they all understand that their happiness, the beauty of their city, the tenderness of their friendships, the health of their children, the wisdom of their scholars, the skill of their makers, even the abundance of their harvest, and the kindly weathers of their skies, spend wholly on this child's abominable misery. This is usually explained to children when they are about between 8 and 12, whenever they seem capable of understanding. And most of those who come to see the child are young people, though often enough, as adults, come back to see the child. No matter how well the matter has been explained to them, these young spectators are always shocked and sickened at the sight of the child. They feel disgust, which they have thought themselves superior to. They feel anger, outrage, impotence, despite all of the explanations. They would like to do something for the child, but there is nothing they can do. If the child were brought up in the sunlight out of that vile place, if it were cleaned and fed and comforted, if the child were brought up into the sunlight out of that vile place, if it were cleaned and fed and comforted, that would be a good thing indeed. But if it were done in that day, an hour, all the prosperity and beauty and delight of Omelas would wither and be destroyed. Those are the terms. To exchange all the goodness and grace of every life in Omelas for that single small improvement, to throw away the happiness of thousands for the chance of the happiness of one, that would be to let guilt within the walls of Omelas. The terms are strict and absolute. There may not even be a kind word spoken to the child. Often, the young people go home in tears, or in a tearless rage, when they have seen the child and face this terrible paradox. They may brood over it for weeks or years, but as time goes on, they begin to realize that even if the child could be released, it would not get much good out of its freedom. A little vague pleasure of warmth and food, no doubt, but little more. It is too degraded and imbecile to know any real joy. It has been afraid for too long ever to be free of fear. Its habits are too uncouth for it to respond to humane treatment. Indeed, after so long, it would probably be wretched without the walls about it to protect it, and the darkness for its eyes, and its own excrement to sit in. Their tears at the bitter injustice dry when they begin to perceive the terrible justice of reality, and to accept it. Yet it is their tears in anger, the trying of their generosity, and the acceptance of their helplessness, which are perhaps the true source of the splendor of their lives. There is no vapid, irresponsible happiness. They know that they, like the child, are not free. They know compassion. It is the existence of the child and their knowledge of its existence that makes possible the nobility of their architecture, the poignancy of their music, the profundity of their science. It is because of the child that they are so gentle with children. They know that if the wretched one were there, snivelling in the dark, the other one, the flute player, could not make joyful music, as the young riders line up in their beauty for the race, in the sunlight of the first morning of summer. Now do you believe in them? Are they not more credible? But there is one more thing to tell you, and this is quite incredible. At times, one of the adolescent girls or boys who go to see the child does not go home to weep or rage, does not in fact go home at all. Sometimes a man or a woman much older falls silent for a day or two, and then leaves home. These people go out into the street and walk down the street alone. They keep walking and walk straight out of the city of Omelas. Through the beautiful gates, they keep walking across the farmlands of Omelas. Each one goes alone, youth or girl, man or woman. Night falls. The traveller must pass down village streets, between the houses with yellow-lit windows, and onto the darkness of the fields. Each alone, they go west or north toward the mountains. They leave Omelas. They walk ahead into the darkness, and they do not come back. The place they go towards is a place even less imaginable to most of us than the city of happiness. I cannot describe it at all. It is possible that it does not exist, but they seem to know where they are going, the ones who walk away from Omelas. So I thought that was incredibly powerful, and I thought it spoke very much deeply to the state of society today, particularly when they start justifying why they should not let the child out because it would not be able to enjoy any of its happiness. And I couldn't help but think that it's basically describing our Western society. We are that society, pinnacle of science, pinnacle of happiness, and if you were to take a standard throughout history, this is the peak so far. But we've got a lot more than one child in that proverbial basement. There are just a few things I've written down, for example, that are sort of the children in the basement that we just tolerate. Because before I get to them, I think we can all agree that that's not a utopia. If the cost of all those things is to have that child locked in a basement in eternal misery, then you're actually doing something evil. Your society is not as perfect as you think it is. So, with that in mind, I thought I'd just list a few examples of our own versions of that child in the basement, and how it's sort of our job to walk away from the moral Omelas, you might say, the moral Omelas of the West. Not that I think anyone else has got it right either. Excuse me. Not that I think anyone else has got it right either, but what we certainly need to at least attempt to do is to walk away from certain aspects of our culture. So, just for example, I was actually shocked when I saw this number. I thought it would be nowhere close. We murder 73 million babies per year in the womb. 73 million. I think that's more people than died in World War One, and we do that annually. And this isn't my numbers. This is according to the Gutenberg Institute, so it's legit. And that should be enough by itself. 1 to 73 million is a crazy ratio. And if we're going to be angry about the one child in the basement, we damn well sure better be angry about our 73 million who we're not just torturing, we're actually killing. Then, just the endless wars in the Middle East, Yemen, how long have those been going on? And what are we there for? Maybe we knew at one point, but we certainly don't know anymore. And why can't we get out? This sort of ties into some of the other points. Things that we just tolerate. Military-industrial complex, prison-industrial complex. Continued exploitation of Africa for cheap labor. Just endless corruption in our government facilities. The continued collapse of rights and freedoms. In my mind, it's just as bad to have that child locked in the basement as it is to have a fully functioning society, but no one can say what they truly think. That would be a disaster. That would be just as evil. Yes, I mentioned child labour in the developing markets. So, I'm not really sure what to do about any of that, but I thought that the story that she'd written, the story of Omelas, is really remarkably similar to our culture today. And it bears some thought, one might say. Now, like I said, I don't have any solutions. But it seems we should at least be aware of that child in the basement and try to think of ways to take it out. Because the one thing they didn't hear, which is quite good, was they mention how everyone is shown the child when they are ready, and how some people refuse and walk away. I'd say in our society, we don't even tell everyone about the child. You sort of have to find it yourself, which is just immediately makes it worse. Sort of secretive. And then at the end here as well, which I really liked, was where they described the person walking away from Omelas. And they say that they don't actually know where they're going. They don't know if the next place they're going to exists at all. But they just can't tolerate the guilt of having to have that evil as one of the societal pillars. So I think that's sort of what we need to do. We need to certainly walk away from that stuff, and I can't tell you where to. But you can't really get worse than that. We know if some ideas just don't work, but I'm sure we can come up with new ones. Or at least change things. Because fortunately for us, there isn't some magical curse where if we take the child out of the basement, all our science and happiness will disappear. We really could stop murdering babies in the womb and keep all our science, essentially. We really could stop with our corruption and things would be better. In fact, we could take the child out of the basement and things would improve. So, I don't really know what to tell you other than that. So yeah, that's going to be the title of this message. Walking away from the moral Omelas. I said Moralis. The moral Omelas. Walking away from the morality of Omelas. Not necessarily the physical place itself, because there's nowhere really to go. So yeah, give that some thought. I certainly will. Walking away from the moral Moralis, Omelas. And on top of the examples I listed, there are probably a fair amount more. And depending on your economic beliefs, you might have one or two things to say too. Yeah, drop down in the comments what you think. This is my first video. I'm gonna be making a lot more. I'll get a lot better. Sorry if it's a bit clunky. Please consider subscribing and drop a comment to tell me what you thought. Cool. Cheers. Awesome to see you.